Hello viewer, welcome to Chapter by Chapter, a map and level design review series where I go over each map in Golden Deer Maddening. Last time we took a look at Chapter 14, and my closing thoughts were that this was among my favorites in the game. So how does Aileil compare? The map objective in this map is defeat boss, so we have to defeat Gwendol. Which after seeing that, I kinda got a little disconnected. Mainly because I find that this game's chapter objectives are at its most enticing to skip, I guess, when there's a defeat boss map with just one boss. Cause that means it's a one and done deal basically. While you can warp skip many maps in 3 houses, I can imagine for some folks that this would just mean reviewing maps could just be trivial or something because you can get your level 35 magic whatever Lysithea and just warp skip. But I don't think it would make for much of a series if I looked at a map and just said, looked pretty but I one and done it. Warp skipping is kind of a notorious thing in Fire Emblem. I mean, LTCing is really fond of this strategy. And hey, I'll warp skip a map, even the ones I'm going to talk about in this series, if it's not really fun enough or engaging enough for me to keep going. But if a map is enjoyable enough and I'm having fun with it, I'm going to pass on the obvious exploits that this game has. In this series, I want to review these maps in a vacuum and evaluate the things that a map tries to do rather than how to beat a map with 3 houses busted mechanics. So I'll admit, Aileil was a map that I got through about 2/3 of the way, and then towards the very end when I knew I was going to either have to have someone die or Divine Pulse, I just warped and I killed Gwendol. But despite me hitting the warp switch and winning, I do have to give credit where it's due. Your allies start on the bottom left of the map, and Ash is kind of chilling in the lower middle, Gwendol is on the upper left, and Judith will appear after a turn or so on the top right. The pacing in this map is decent, and I always felt like I was on the move. And as the pacing was being constant and I was bait and switching and I was doing very standard Fire Emblem strats, the pacing jumped in a positive direction after Judith got attacked by ambush spawns. Kudos goes to this chapter for providing an incentive to move ahead more quickly. Judith is solid, but she's still dependent on luck to not get herself killed, and I almost lost her because of an unlucky hit. In no time, I found myself working to get Claude up to her, gambiting the Cavaliers, and giving Judith some time to heal up. After this quick jump in pacing, that's about as eventful as this map ever really got. I did like the chest placement in this map as well because I found they were complementary to a map's pacing. There are some chapters that have chests that are pretty out there that are kind of against the natural flow of a map on how far they have to go. And personally, I like it when chests are not too far away from the main objective, but far enough that you are taking either some sort of risk in trying to get out there, or you have to go to a certain distance to get to the chest, but you're not taking yourself completely out of the chapter. So I do appreciate the chests being placed in places that would kind of come alongside the linear aspect of this map, which is a good idea. Sadly though, I was really disappointed in what you got. You get a silver shield as a reward for the chest that's nearest to Gwendol, and if it were up to me, I would make sure the highest reward is near Gwendol, because that means I have more of a reward for actually trying to like push myself to get there. But that being said, if Claude does talk to Judith, you get an energy drop, which is pretty sick. I enjoyed this map because it felt like I had to do on-the-fly party splitting over just relying on gambits over and over and over again, or combat arts, or personal skills. This is one that I really had to kind of think and spread my forces in 2 different directions, because part of the gimmick of this map is that reinforcements are coming from 2 directions that's causing you to have to spread yourself a little thin. But even despite being pushed in 2 different directions, the gap between both sides didn't feel huge enough where I didn't feel like I was committing on one side or another with a certain unit. I felt I needed to rely more on not worrying about stretching myself too thin and overextending versus just kiting enemies and gambiting around. And the ambush spawns in this map in particular, I found weren't even that egregious. They didn't just show up right behind you and instantly kill you. They actually kind of happened throughout later on in the chapter, which I did actually very much enjoy. Despite this, however, the map did start to become a little bit boring towards the end. Judith, if left unattended, is kind of unreliable and was about to get herself killed if I didn't make it in that turn. And that's not what kind of upsets me, but then I just felt like I had to babysit her instead of planning out how I'm going to approach Gwendol. Making a green unit surviving as part of a map objective, for me, usually spells some sort of disaster or this aspect of, I don't know, clunkiness, for lack of a better term, because instead of fully concentrating myself on Gwendol, I have to focus on making sure Judith doesn't get herself killed. Thankfully, Judith starts pretty high up in the map, and she isn't mounted, which means she's not going to be as obnoxiously green unit-esque as Rodrigue was, Now I can definitely appreciate that my autopiloting almost costed me the chapter, and I had to resort to some pretty hardcore warp strats and actually had to Hunter's Volley with a fail nod to actually beat Gwendol. That being said, Gwendol is like the least intimidating boss in the game, but cavalry bosses, I mean, they are just not that scary. If you got Lysithea, she instantly wins, which is kind of unfortunate. And this is kind of an out there preference for me. It takes a lot of, whether it's, you know, story driven stuff or anything that's really inspiring to make a lava map interesting. I know this is like really, like, again, kind of a weird take, but I know I know map spriters who've tried to make lava maps that are just so limited in what their tile set can offer, because lava maps just like are so straightforward. It's like, here's some winding territory and there's some lava, and like that's it. It's like, I don't know, it's just a boring aesthetic for me. I can't think of a single good like lava chapter. I mean, I guess FE8's Gorgon chapters were pretty cool. I can only think of that one that was remotely interesting. Like I said, credit where credit's due, even though this map can be exploited in a single turn, because like Gwendol's not even that far away. It has good pacing, it has good incentives to push further when you start to see Judith getting in trouble, and I also like how the different reinforcement spots, if you want to commit to, you know, taking care of these enemies, they're going to spread yourselves thin, but not too thin where it's almost hopeless to get a certain unit on one side to another side. Some cons though, like I said, this map is really easy to exploit. Ambush spawns can get the better of you, but it could be worse. And Judith stays a green unit and she's part of victory conditions to survive. Again, I mean, that could just be me being annoyed that there's multiple objectives, but I'm just not a huge fan of mandatory survival green units who aren't gonna guaranteed survive. If there was gonna be any map that had Judith be recruitable, it should have been this one. There is no exclusive Golden Deer unit, and I found that getting Judith on board would be such an easy opportunity that wouldn't really affect anything else. She's such a presence in the main campaign that I find that if any place, this map would really stand out by being like the Judith definitive recruit map. And it would really fix the aspect of post-rescue babysitting that this map has. I think it would be really, really memorable for this chapter to have this much going for it, despite the aesthetics being really drab, having Judith be recruitable. It's still solidly placed and the enemy placement is fine, but after you take care of Judith, the map feels like it's basically over. And then it's just a matter of picking off enemies if you don't go on complete autopilot until you decide, hey, let's just kill Gwendol with a warp and some kind of weird strat. All in all, this map is still good. It's up there with one of the better ones in my opinion, so I give this map a B-. There's definitely things that make it interesting, but as far as the aesthetics go, and as far as some other stuff goes, like I said before, it's kind of So let me know what you would rank this map yourself, because I'm very curious. It's not the worst thing, and it's not the best thing. It's just a solid B-. Like, that's still like a 70%. Guys, that's going to do it for my Aileil review. Like I said, some chapters are going to be, you know, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes. This one is going to be shorter than the other one. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Maybe you got some more insight on how I like to see my maps. And, or maybe you completely disagree and think I'm super biased. That being said, thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one. Deuces.